Well, it finally happened. Make Games, Drink Coffee finally has a whole segment about actually drinking and making coffee. So, my guest this week is Lauryn Ash, and she'll introduce herself in a second. But I just wanted to let you know that the first half of this episode is about a whole bunch of interesting topics, but the second half of the show is just about coffee. So if you've been listening to episodes of this podcast and you kept thinking, sure, video games are cool, but when are you going to talk about coffee? Now's your chance. Let's get to the episode. Make games. Drink coffee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauryn Ash. I currently live in sunny San Francisco. I'm a narrative designer and writer, and I'm currently working on my own projects. And I've been consulting for indie games and AAA for about 13 years now.
A lot of your background is actually a more, I don't want to say conventional because I don't know if that sounds good or bad, but you went to school to learn game design at some point and you worked your way up doing game design, but you have some other experiences that are a little bit further afield than that. And one of them I wanted to ask about was being an assistant director of a children's theater program. I have heard some people who are really into theater and video games talk about how strongly their theater experience actually relates to game design because it's about building an experience for people. And, you know, there's stuff about immersive theater and interactive theater that people that are into that stuff get really excited about when they relate it to video games. But also you mentioned on the little LinkedIn blurb about it that you're working with a kids theater camp and, you know, you're teaching them a lot of things. But I started thinking designing video games is often like directing children's theater, but like across time and space. So
I love that depiction so much, Aaron, and it's so true.
So do you consciously relate those experiences together, or is it just sort of like a back pocket thing?
So it's actually a really interesting question. I sometimes forget that I was the assistant director of children's theater for quite a time because it was so long ago. But it was one of those experiences that definitely transformed the way I think about probably managing people, like you mentioned. But it's actually something that I brought into kind of the level design and kind of game design experiences that I took into more cinema design, or I should say cinematic design, or conversation style design in video games.
So I'm thinking about this from the perspective of a lot of game design involves trying to get people to do something without making it too obvious that that's what you're trying to get them to do. So it's the sort of Valve game design philosophy when they decide to make a game every once in a while of directing attention and hinting about what you're supposed to do in a given situation, or about teaching by demonstrating something in a non-obvious way. You've mentioned a bunch of times in your professional stuff on LinkedIn how interested you are in first-time user experiences and tutorialization and things like that. So I'm wondering if you feel like there's any relationship between the world of theater and of direction and of creating those experiences and of building games in a way that teach people what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be having fun without being too direct about it.
Theater and game design are so interconnected for me. And I love that you mentioned about how it's the first time user experience or getting people to do something that they're not quite sure they want to do. Because when I look at my game design philosophy, I was in theater all throughout high school, all 4 years. So I was in a production twice a year, both in the fall and in the spring. And every semester, it switched off, whether it was going to be a musical or it was going to be a play. And since I was also doing that, I was also in competitive drama. It's like debate. So if people are like, I'm a debater, and they go to debate tournaments, well, there's also the drama kids, and they go to the debate tournaments as well, but they do drama performances. There is a term for this, but this was a long time ago in the galaxy of Lauren's youth. And I think that when it comes to theater and it comes to these experiences, because I was a participant in theater and because I was a participant and I was also someone that wanted to get into theater originally, particularly about playwriting, which is what I originally went to school for. I wanted to kind of produce plays. And so becoming the assistant director of kind of children's theater was kind of a way to try to test out assistant directing. What did that mean? How did it operate? And I think that where we look at game design, we look at a lot of these places in the world as kind of sets, kind of themes. And I think that's why it relates really well to the first time user experience, because it's not so much about when the curtain opens, what is the first time, right, the audience is going to see, what's the first line of dialogue they're going to hear. It's you can translate all of that into as soon as the player puts their hands on the sticks, that's when I consider it the first time user experience. Versus you could say, what's the first cinematic opening of the game?
Hmm.
Because sometimes those are two different things, but both I think need that type of immersive kind of theater experience. I think one of my funnest anecdotes for you is I was actually studying abroad in the UK, and I was cast as a side character in Shakespeare's A Comedy of Errors. And this entire performance was done what would be considered as in the round. Are you familiar with the term?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you're surrounded by audience.
You are surrounded by audience on every side, and there are kind of aisles. So for us, there were 4 aisles, which kind of means there were kind of 4 quadrants. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4 of audience members. And the round is a really exciting, it's kind of like, it's 360. So when you're performing, you've got your front to some part of the audience, and you will absolutely have your butt to other parts of the audience. And this kind of transformed my way thinking of theater, to be completely honest with you. Because even though I had been in, at that point, probably like 6 productions, and it was all just really fun, main cast, side cast, understudy, so kind of cast, but really the person in black, like doing the stagehand things in the back. And I'd been the assistant director for a couple of summers at that point. But what I had never really understood was that you can have such a more dramatic performance when you actually allow the audience to fill in the gaps of maybe what your facial expression is, and it's just your voice. And it's almost freer as a performer. And so when I look at my game design experiences, I never design an experience in isolation or from a fixed perspective. I always try to kind of think about, well, if the player turns around, what are they going to see? And I think so many level designs from linear level designs can benefit from this kind of reverse perspective. So, for example, when you're running down, right, a level in Tomb Raider, it's a very linear game. Um, if you turn around, knowing what you see, is something going to break? Is your immersion going to change? What's the experience? And I know that a lot of really great game designers in the industry also play the level backwards after it's been completed to see what they've missed, or if there's potential for, say, an optional Easter egg where there's something you can only see if you look around. And I think that not only does Tomb Raider do this really well, but the team at Respawn does this really well in Jedi Fallen Order, and in the Jedi games, because there's a lot of opportunities where you have to actually turn around, and that's how you get out of the level. And it's just it's really, really simple things, right? And so I think that it's understanding perspective and kind of where people are coming into the level designs, or understanding how do you want that first experience of the game to actually form in the player's mind, set the tone for, say, the production of the experience. That's where I think theater really, really shines and really comes in. And I'm excited we're talking about it in the game design perspective, Aaron, because so many people go, oh, theater. So obviously character and plot and maybe placement and setting, right? It feels like it has a one-to-one with cinema, but I think theater has so much more to offer in the terms of immersive sim design, open world level design, particularly open world level design, where I think that can take so much more from modern film and TV shooting sets, which also we have to remember, movies came from plays.
Level design is one of the areas of game design that I think I have the most fun doing, but have not had the opportunity to do much professionally, because my first professional gig was doing cutscenes, and that was like a one-off thing. And then I went back to film school, and then I ended up getting in through software engineering, and it was Facebook games. So it was basically web app development, and then game design for free to play on Facebook and then on mobile. And mostly on games with no sense of levels, right? It was a lot of character collection battle games.
Right, of
And
course.
so when I decided to start working on my own stuff, one of the first things I did was I worked on a Metroidvania puzzle platformer project. I worked on it for a while. And my initial idea about how I would handle the level design was actually to pack everything really, really close together because I thought it would be fun to make it sort of feel really efficient and tight and it would be clever and all that stuff. But I ran into this really big problem that Metroidvanias had already solved in a different way, which
Yeah.
is that if you're going to have people explore around, get stuck, then go find the right way, get a new ability, and then go use it where they need to use it, you have to create a space that's memorable enough that they will be able to say to themselves, oh, this is the place where I probably would have needed the high jump to get to that thing that I couldn't get to. And I think people take sort of snapshots in their minds of different places that are different because they're different, because we remember novelty. And I had to redesign all the level design in the game to pull things further apart so that I could create more memorable spaces with more negative space so that people could remember where they had been more clearly. And later on, I decided to finally do something I'd wanted to do my whole life, which is to make and release levels for the original Doom games, which is so much fun. I highly
That's
recommend
I
it.
That sounds amazing. That sounds so, so, so much fun. I absolutely love the original levels for the Doom or the original Doom game levels, because I just feel like they're so tight.
Mhm,
And when I say tight, what I mean is they're so well enclosed to create a sense of that high stakes, high tension need to play the game mechanics over and over again.
mhm.
And yet, at each turn, there's some sort of surprise.
Yes, and making levels for Doom, once you learn it, so I would imagine if you come from, for example, like a 3D modeling background, then making levels for Doom is really weird because it is not a 3D game. It's a 2D game that's like extruded into a 3D space. So you're basically building a blueprint only and then playing inside it, and you sort of click on each part of the blueprint. Those are sectors. And you say like the floor is here, the ceiling is there, and that's how you create height variance. So it is weird for people coming from 3D, but it also means that you can make levels really fast and you don't lose much without having the ability to put rooms on top of other rooms because you gain that back in the efficiency at which you can build your levels. And I tried to bring the lessons of those original levels and of what I'd learned from other projects and think I want to make spaces that are distinct, that are interesting. I want to use the advantages of having it be more abstract to say like, yes, you can create a space that doesn't really make any logical sense, but it looks cool. And looking cool is actually something that has utility because then people will remember it and they'll remember where they've been. And so then I tried to bring in a lot of that directing attention and foreshadowing. There's a lot of things that you can see before you can get to them. And I feel like that's the sort of thing that is easy to forget when you're doing game design and level design because you get focused on, let's say, an encounter or a mechanic or a system without being able to zoom out and go, am I directing the player's attention properly? Am I giving them something memorable so that when they come back here, they're not lost? Things like that.
You actually brought up three very awesome points between theater and level design. And I say theater, and I probably more specifically, you could say the set design and the way in which you kind of create the set so that the audience can kind of see not only what's happening on the stage, but also what's about to happen. And so, kind of going back to your Metroidvania example for a bit here, I really loved how you say you have to create something that's memorable and about it has enough difference, and there wasn't enough difference in your levels, and they were all really close together. But what you probably ended up doing, and what I wanted to just ask you really quickly, is you actually create a lot of distance between those spaces now as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that turns out to be important because the time that you spend not doing anything interesting, you're still playing the game and you're still thinking about what you're seeing and what you're doing. And the space between the exciting stuff is still important.
It really is, and it's that silence. Okay, it's the distance between spaces. A lot of times when we talk about open world or exploration design in video games, we kind of get this kind of, I don't know, we get hung up on how fast are people moving from, like you mentioned, encounter to encounter. But I actually had the opportunity very early in my career to not only have done kind of the assistant theater direction, but I kind of also was a part of kind of the anime convention scene. And when I say that, I mean, I actually hosted anime conventions. I hosted kind of live experiences in those spaces. And those are, I say players, but those are like, right, community members, volunteers. Those are people that want to role play. They want to be immersed into that environment, into your life in a hotel, convention center, right, for 3 days. And I mention this because it's all about reusing your space. And it's the distance that people have to cross, even if it's a, say, one hotel room to, say, the next panel, or if it's one panel room to the next. It's this kind of design thinking about experience design. What's the best way to get a bunch of anime cosplayers for Naruto from one end of the convention to the next? Because Inuyasha is coming in for their photo shoot. And I know that sounds like such a weird thing that sounds like it might not have anything to do with theater. But like Inuyasha and Naruto are totally different properties. They're going to want both their own backdrops and sets, right? And there's going to be 5,000 Itachis, which is fine. Okay. But you've got to move these people from one to the next. And I feel like in video games, what you're looking at here is that you also mentioned foreshadowing and direction. And so when we look at things in the real meat space of our humanity and our world, right, is that we have lots of signs, right? Lots of things on the road, even. Stop. Please stop. There will be a stop sign here. Okay. Stop ahead. And I love it when I see that overt iconography and level design, but I love it more when it is that sense of the 2D to 3D space of Doom, where you just create a cutout or you create something that is like a red sign that players are like, oh, what is that? I should come back to it. And I don't know why yet. And in theater, you see this actually a lot. If anyone does go to a play or maybe you go to a film, you'll see something that you can't use yet or a door you can't open. And it's as easy as having a closed sign at the beginning of West Side Story, right? Then you know there's going to be a shop because you see the word closed. You see a storefront that says closed. You know it's going to appear. And so it's just going, okay, well, when the sign flips open, now it feels novel, even though you've actually seen it in the back of your head throughout the entire play or musical, almost the entire performance.
John Romero figured this out in 1993. His Doom levels are exceptionally good about showing you things you can't get to yet in ways that are obvious enough that you go, how do I get that thing? And then you just keep thinking about it. It's such a useful tool, especially in games that want replayability, is like teasing the thing. And it's not super obvious about it. It's not the telltale, character will remember that, right? It's not hitting you over the head with it. It's just letting you see it and then not letting you get it.
With the telltale thing, there's like two things about that. Like one is that did the characters actually ever remember it? And then it was kind of like the whole controversy that came out where it was like sometimes they didn't. Like they actually didn't. It was just a part of the experience to make players feel like their choices mattered.
Oh, yeah.
Because they did matter, but it may not have actually mattered in that moment, right? You can only have the Telltale only wanted to have so many branching, right, canonical storylines. And I think it was less about the character will actually remember it. They didn't. It was that the game state was like, hey, you've created a choice here that will change your outcome. But they didn't want to say that. They didn't want to say, by the way, choice matrix detected, check, check. Right? They said character will remember this. And I think that's actually a part of the theater of it. That's the part of the first time user experience that we were all tricked into thinking those characters remembered. They did not. They remembered nothing. But we remembered it. And I think that's what's important.
Yeah, it is a way of conveying to the audience that something is important and that they should remember it. I mean, it's also much better than saying like our producer might cut the thing that is related to this in our, 2 episodes from now because we don't have the time for it. It's much better than that.
Absolutely. It's much better than that. Yeah, I wish TV shows would have that too, right? Where like you could introduce a character as a cameo because you don't know if they'll be able to film like what you originally wrote at the end of your season. Like that would just be fantastic. Actually, speaking of that, it does connect to screenwriting because that's a lot of the reason why I've been writing a lot of TV pilots lately.
Ooh, nice.
And when you write a TV pilot, even though I do have some main characters, such as like the main character's best friend, but that person doesn't actually come up frequently enough for me to include them in the pilot. Because if the pilot never gets greenlit, we have spent more money on more characters than we really needed to tell the story of the pilot. And so it's actually it's all interconnected now, Aaron. Like it's all the same kind of philosophy and designs when you think about, right, the economic use of kind of the creativity and the assets that you have available to you, which all really did kind of boil down to all of my time as either assistant directors of children's theater, because maybe the child will get sick, or kind of, yeah, it was great. I'm really glad we talked less about kind of maybe the childcare aspect of it, only because I absolutely loved working with the children. But I would never say that, I would never want to start equating that to maybe other experiences I've had in my professional life.
Yeah, sure.
At least not maybe right now.
Yeah. Make Games Drink Coffee is brought to you by me, Aaron Nemoitin. I'd love to grow the audience for this podcast to the point that it can pay for itself in some way. To that end, it would really help if you left a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or like and comment if you're watching on YouTube. You show that algorithm who's boss. All right, back to the show.
I was going to say, I'm so excited to be talking about coffee. That's really what I should have put in my bio, is that really I know things and I drink coffee. That's really, really kind of my brand. My cats are called Mugicha and Cupuccino, so Mugi and Kupo for short, which are Final Fantasy references, if anybody is curious, because Mugi is a little Moogle. But she's also named for like barley tea. So I kind of really just love that I'm here because I saw a lot of your episodes. I was kind of watching them to get a sense of what to talk about. And then, yeah, everyone is very professional. So I will try to be professional today. But I really love coffee. And so now we're actually going to be your kind of like drink coffee / make coffee, which will be really exciting.
Yeah, and well, depending on how much of a coffee snob you are, you may be somewhat horrified to learn that I am drinking a combination of just brewed coffee in a pot from today and also the leftover brewed coffee in the pot from yesterday that I microwaved.
Oh my God, Aaron, we can be better than this. We are better than this, okay?
Well, so it's funny because for a while, when I was living in Sacramento, I was working at an EA studio, and my wife went to pharmacy school in Stockton, which is far enough away that commuting either direction would be a big pain in the butt. And so after living together for a while, we lived separately, and I lived in a tiny cottage, and I would make myself fresh pour over, cup by cup, every morning. And it was really great. And then time passed. We moved in back together. We had kids. And at some point, you just go, you know what? We both want coffee. I'm going to brew a pot with the Pete's coffee I got from Costco, and it's going to be good enough for now. And I'll have the fancy coffee when I go out.
Everyone actually gives the Pete's coffee from Costco such shit. So let me start by saying I am a coffee snob. I am. And the reason why I say I'm a snob is because I have what some people would call taste. That's not to say you don't have taste, Aaron, or people that are drinking the Pete's coffee from Costco don't have taste. I think it's all different, and it all depends on the type of style, brew, and what your life needs. Coffee is meant to fit into your life. You aren't meant to necessarily change your life for the coffee you drink. I think that's something that people just really get wrong a lot of the times when they start to say, well, I'm getting into coffee.
Coffee's getting into you.
Yeah, coffee is getting into me as fast as possible. And that is why I moved from a meditative pour over practice every morning to just shots of espresso.
Nice.
Yeah, so I actually like the Pete's coffee from Costco. So everyone who is a coffee snob and you're only drinking, I did say I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I actually do live in San Francisco proper. So I think I could walk to 2 different Blue Bottles and like 2 different rituals, totally varying distances, excuse me, totally varying distances. But at the same time, like I am actually drinking, this is still a local roaster, so I guess it's not the Pete's coffee from Costco, but I got my bag at Target. It is Peerless Coffee Roasters out of Oakland. And pre-pandemic, they were one of the, if not the largest, roaster in the Bay Area for hotels and diners and restaurants because they just do large batch production. And this is one of the first bags they've ever done that's small batch production. And their small batch is a 2-pound bag of coffee. Um, so for me, my life is now I just want a lot of coffee and I make a lot of coffee at home. So it does need to be what snobs would say are like a little higher quality, but it's also a local Oakland roaster, right? It's someone that I'm actually contributing to in a small business. And I'm contributing to those people being able to actually continue to roast coffee locally in San Francisco and in the Bay Area versus, say, maybe Pete's, which is a huge conglomerate. But I at that point, it just comes down to like the amount of kind of coffee you need, how frequently, and also, right, do you have time, Aaron, in your busy life to pour over every day? I would argue you do, since this is an episode about making coffee and drinking games. Uh,
There are days when I probably do. What happens often is that so I've been working from home since 2016, and my wife has a hospital job where she sometimes works from home and sometimes doesn't. And we have 2 kids, and she tends to get the baby ready in the morning while I get our son breakfast, he's older. And so making a pot of coffee so that I can have some before I have to drive the kids to school and daycare, and then I'll bring up a coffee for my wife, like just doing it all at once. It's about efficiency right now. That's the important thing. And I imagine, as time goes by and things get a little easier and the kids can actually get themselves ready for school, then I can slow down. Then I can, get back to maybe some nicer pour over coffee.
I agree. And I think especially for new parents, like I'm the oldest child. And so I didn't actually grow up in a household where coffee was a really big kind of important part of the morning ritual. But even I remember having to pour the orange juice for your little sister, like you're getting yourself ready. Mom's trying to make breakfast, but your sister's really young and doesn't want to get her shoes on. So like I kind of remember taking on just small responsibilities, nothing what a real parent would. But what I'm trying to at least get across here is that like I'm not one of the coffee ritual snobs that will have to say, like, well, do you know there is an individual pour over machine you could just buy for, a nice cheap, like $3,000? Like,
Nope, I'll use the plastic thing that I can get at Daiso.
yes. Yes, use the plastic thing you can get at Daiso. Like, it's going to be great. I was actually going to ask, now that we're talking about rituals, or after we talk about rituals, we did want to talk about like hardware, like what you actually would use, right? Versus what you're currently using,
Yeah.
and things like that. What is your brewing contraption?
So we had a housemate for a while, and it just happened to work out that we all moved in together. It was like me and my wife, our son, daughter hadn't been born yet, and our housemate in March of 2020 decided to get a place together to save money because my wife and him work together. So
That's
they could,
amazing, though. Like the timing on that could not have been better.
yeah. So we were all stuck together, and he had a coffee machine. He also was getting Death Wish coffee. And he would always make an entire pot in the morning, and however much we drank, and then the rest would just be left over, and we'd just drink it the next day. And then, um, so around COVID was also the time I found out that I was prone to acid reflux, and the Death Wish coffee did not help.
That is the worst for you. So I would say that even as a coffee person, I've been technically been making pour overs since I was since probably 2011s. Like I have been making pour overs, and it is because my roommate was Japanese and had a little thing probably from a Daiso. And at that time, I didn't even know what Daiso was. So like my little backstory here is that I grew up kind of all over America, but on very kind of rural, like adjacent communities. So yes, they were suburban. If you would consider the next urban destination to be 3 hours away, suburban, then yes, absolutely. And when I went to college, I obviously, right, everybody's kind of coming from all these different places, but that's when I found out about like what I assume is the replica of the Hario, right? The Hario V60, or it's really just the cone, right? So it's going to be shaped like, yeah, like a cone. Everyone will actually be able to see my video, and I keep forgetting that. So it is shaped like a cone versus a flat, right? Which is what you probably have for your coffee machine. Is that correct? Like your drip coffee. So is it a cone or is it a drip? And like, this is important.
Is it? It's a cone. Yeah.
Okay, it's a cone. Okay, so the reason why it's important is that your grind size between flat bottom and, say, cone is different than it would be for, is slightly in the coffee world, right? We're talking about coffee and making coffee, would actually be different. And so, for example, I would say that honestly, for beginners, you can use whatever grind size you want. The reason why this connects to Death Wish, however, is because Death Wish has such high caffeine content, which makes it have such high acidity that it also comes pre-ground. And so if it's in a flat bottom, you're going to get a little bit more of an even distribution in your drip. So more water is going to pass through because it is an automated drip machine. Versus if it's a cone, just think about the way physics works. How much fits here, right? How much fits here? What's the point, right? Of kind of it gets concentrated. So you're like, it's not just about the death with coffee. You can have less coffee and more water and make something, it's not going to be quite less acidic. That's not how it works. But for basic make coffee, drink games podcast, I'm going to keep doing this. It's amazing. For the basic, let's making our coffee. That's the basic kind of like ratio to think about is that when you have the cone burner, it's going to make things more acidic.
Mm.
So what did you switch to, though? So you switched from Death Wish to Pete's? Is that what happened? What was the journey there?
So what happened was that our housemate just moved out. He left the coffee machine because he moved to a tiny apartment in San Francisco that's up like 3 flights of stairs. So he just left a bunch of stuff here. He was like, whatever, keep it. So I started having to buy my own coffee, and we started shopping at Costco a lot because it's cheaper, and we have kids, and it's better to make one giant trip for buying stuff than multiple small trips if you can do it. So I just started getting whatever was pre-ground and on sale at Costco, and that's how we end up with Pete's. I did at one point get a few pounds of this brown sugar cinnamon coffee, and my wife hates it. So I just make it whenever I'm alone and I remember that it's there, but it's been like a year, so I might just have to throw it out at some point.
So I'm not a flavor coffee person, but I'm super curious. Brown sugar cinnamon coffee. Do you remember the brand?
I don't. I could go get it if you want to wait.
Yes. Okay. I actually will go get the coffee that I drank. You get the coffee that you like, and then we will compare the
Okay.
current coffees that
Well,
we
I
have.
bought it. I didn't say I like it. I think it's
No, exactly.
okay.
So we're going to talk about it, right?
Okay,
It's going to
I'll
be
be right
great.
back.
Okay. Okay, so show me this brown sugar cinnamon coffee. Oh, it's a Cafe de Olla. Okay.
Okay, this is the first time I'd seen it.
Okay, so this is something that I also just recently discovered, despite probably needing to have known about it more. And I am going to look up the actual definition here for us. So, a Cafe de Olla is a traditional Mexican spiced coffee brewed with ground coffee, cinnamon, piloncillo, which is unrefined cane sugar, and cloves. It is historically prepared in an earthen clay pot.
I was going to mention this before. I love food, I love coffee, I love trying different things, but I think in general, my sense of taste is like baseline, I will like almost anything. So I am not picky, even though I do
Yeah.
like fancy stuff.
No, I think that's great. I think that's how more people should be, Aaron. Like, you can be a foodie and still love everything. If anything, you're more of a foodie because you actually love food. I do want to share with you today the Pureless coffee I was talking about that I got from Target. They actually won the Roaster of the Year in 2019 for Roast Magazine, which I didn't know about.
Nice.
I am currently drinking their espresso blend because I mentioned to you I moved from pour over to espresso. And it really kind of came down to the same reason you moved from Death Wish to Pete's. The acidity of a pour over is just a lot higher. And when you start moving into enjoying coffee for taste, I would say, rather than function, you sometimes, and I do think this is true even in myself, though I prefer medium and dark roasts, is that you do move to lighter roasts, or you at least try lighter roasts. And so I tried a lighter roast, and it, in fact, when you make lighter roast coffee, it has more acidity. It's not a lot more acidity than a dark roast, but it's enough. Versus, say, decaf being kind of, you could say, hyper roasted, and kind of the caffeine has been pulled out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That has the darkest kind of color, the darkest roast. But this is a medium roast. It's whole bean because I grind my own coffee beans. And And it has tasting notes of milk chocolate, roasted nuts, and a smooth finish. So if anyone is listening to this and wanted like an educational dive into coffee versus maybe just like Aaron and Lauren talking about how amazing coffee is. I mean, obviously I recommend James Hoffmann, but I also recommend reading the tasting notes on the bag and just going, can I taste the notes?
Mhm.
And if not, why not? And a lot of that's really going to come down to whether or not what your brew method is, how long your extraction time is. And extraction time is how long water sit with coffee. That's really it. I like to explain things like I'm 5 because when I wake up in the morning, I am a 5-year-old and I need that for myself.
And that's the end of today's episode. An abrupt stop, I know, but it was fun, right? Don't miss the next episode. We will go deep on screenwriting and talk about The Matrix, among other things. Thanks for listening to Make Games Drink Coffee. You can find out more at makegamesdrinkcoffee.com, and you can email me at makegamesdrinkcoffee@gmail.com. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, and tip your barista. Drink up. I'll see you next time.